I'm going to do an overview of a recent project of mine, and I'll start off with just saying that the project was, the purpose of the project was to allow users to create an account and allow users to post technical questions, and then also to allow those users to answer various technical questions. So I'll start off by just walking through some of the basic dependencies of the project. The project used the alert node, the bcrypt, body parser, EJS, the express, nodemon, PG, and the Sequelize libraries to develop the project. I'm also going to just kind of do a brief overview of the coding for the project, and then also do a demonstration to show how the project works. The project, I set it up, it had it utilized an ORM and utilized Sequelize and the Postgres database, and then primarily most of the database initially was set up using the command line interface and running a DB Sequelize file, but then also I had the Postico GUI interface to be able to visually look at the various tables that were set up within the database, just to visually check and make sure that things were saving to the database correctly. You can see with the users table that the passwords that we were using when they were saved to the database, they were saved encrypted to help with the security of the application, and that was the bcrypt functionality that was used within the application. So I'm going to go back to the coding itself and just kind of very generally just go over how this was set up with the different files. The application starts off with a pretty standard format of using an app.js file as the entry point to the application, and this was where the runtime environment was set up for the application. So set up the various instances of our required libraries that we were using here, and of course our Express runtime environment. This is the port that the application is running on locally, port 3000. We use the body parser, we use the EJS view engine here. We also used a public folder for our image files and our CSS files that's being referenced here. We're requiring, we had a folder for our different routes that is set up here in this directory, and we had routes for answers for the questions, an index route where basically we set up these constants requiring the various routes that we're referencing here, and that's what I'm showing with this here. The application itself, we used a combination of the ORM and the database model to essentially pass the data from the databases from one route to the other, and we did that through a combination of using route parameters through the EJS views file, and then also when forms were submitted on the EJS files, those forms, they passed the data in the form submission through the various routes. Also used promises to with a callback, so that when a particular route was queried and the data was retrieved from a request, then we would be able to get that data, and in some instances it was pushed to the database, and in other instances with the app.get, the data was rendered to the end user. Let's see if there's anything else to review just in terms of how we have things laid out. Just showing the various routes that are set up here. One thing too, just to point out with the sign up pages and the login screens, the sign up pages set up some logic so that if there was already a user that had the same username, then it would create an alert and prompt the user to enter in another username, and then on the login screen compared the user's password from the table to verify that they entered in the correct password, and if they did enter the correct password, then it would take them to the load profile page. So let's go ahead and just take a look at a few of the EJS files. With the EJS files that we have here, there was some logic set up in the EJS files just to loop through the tables from the database to display the various questions that the user had asked, and we matched up the question ID from one table to the question ID with the answers table so that we could display the correct answer with the correct question. So that's a general overview of how the application was coded, and there will be a link to the GitHub account if anyone wants to look in more detail at the actual code. And so now I'm just going to walk through an example of the application itself. Right here with creating a new account, I'm just going to show here that it's requiring for the fields to be filled out, and this is showing that the username's already been taken. So I'll just enter in another username here. And then a password, and then we just created a new account. And so now we'll go to the sign-in page where an individual can sign in as a user to the application, and they can either ask the system a question here. It'll show questions that this particular user has asked before. The application, I've run it several times, so it's got some questions that this particular user has asked before. But I'll go ahead and just enter in a question here so that we can see how this actually works. So the user can select a category. They can select either front end, back end, database, Git, or other. I'll go ahead and choose other, and we'll just enter in a question here. And when they click the submit button, then it just takes them to this particular route, and then we can show that the question has been added to the list of questions pages here. So it's asking the best machine, and the user also has the opportunity to answer questions from other users in the community. And I'll just show how you can answer a question by clicking on that button there. And so with the answer cards, we see that the question shows up here, what is the best machine? And then I'll submit an answer here. I'm just putting in, I like my MacBook Pro. It has a solid state drive and is very adequate and is very useful for my daily work. And we'll go ahead and submit that. Okay. And so on the answers page, it shows the answers card with the question, and it has the answer that pulls up here. So this is just a brief overview of my recent project, and if you'd like to see more, check out my GitHub account under github.com